5-member committee to investigate these allegations that are raised against the Chief Justice in this petition. Shortly, I'll be joined in the studio by two colleagues of mine, Fred Tete Jabano and Hansen Ajimai, to discuss this particular issue, which is just coming in from the Jubilee House. And then breaking news story is that President John Dramani Mahama has suspended the Chief Justice of the Republic after some petitions, or 3 petitions, were brought to him in respect of the conduct of the Madam Chief Justice of the Republic. Fred Jabano joins me in the studio, as well as Hansen Ajimai, two colleagues of mine from the newsroom, to discuss this particular statement that is just emerging from the Jubilee House, which says that President John Dramani Mahama suspended the Chief Justice of the Republic. Gentlemen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Hansen, you anticipated it, right?
Yes,
because about a week or 2 ago, we saw it on social media. We saw, persons close to the government making such issues, across. It was expected.
Yes, the information that we had obtained was that a prima facie case had been established against the Chief Justice, and essentially what a prima facie means is that on the face value of the allegations against the Chief Justice, the President and the Council of State, by the constitutional duty imposed on them by Article 146 of the Constitution, had come to the determination that she had to answer certain questions. Not necessarily that she was found guilty of or wanting of these allegations, but at least on the face or bare value of the allegations that were before the Council of State and the President, as well as the response that the Chief Justice had given to these petitions, she needed to answer. Then the next question was that if that prima facie had been established, but the processes aligned by Article 146 of the Constitution, the President was supposed to form a committee, a 5-member committee, to now investigate and see a trial, for want of a better word, of a sort of the Chief Justice to determine if indeed she is guilty or have committed the allegations leveled against her, which would then culminate into her removal. But while these proceedings are ongoing, the Constitution, by Article 146, Clause 10, gives the discretion to the President to decide whether or not the Chief Justice should step aside by a warrant signed by him in consultation with the Council of State.
The President is just going according to the dictates of the Constitution.
Certainly. So after we heard information that the prima facie had been established, the questions and what we were seeking to now get was which people were going to form part of the 5-member committee, and 2, whether the President was going to exercise the discretion that has been granted him by Article 146, Clause 10 of the 1992 Constitution. Later, or the end of last week, we had information that he had taken the decision to suspend her. So before the weekend, and this before the Easter festivities, we're anticipating the communication of this information. What we've also heard was that the presidency was hoping to make an official communication to the Chief Justice herself before communicating to the media. And so for the news to come out today, it is news, but not news, because a number of persons who had their ears close to the presidency had already given indication that this particular decision had been taken.
Definitely. You're still watching ChannelOne TV, coming to you live from our studio here. The news is that President John Dramani Mahama has suspended the Chief Justice of the Republic and has set up a 5-member committee to investigate some 3 petitions that were brought to the President or sent to the President in respect of misconduct in court against the Chief Justice. Fred, I remember very well having a conversation with you in the newsroom in respect of this particular issue. So now that she's been, suspended, a 5-member committee is expected to investigate this matter. If the committee finds out that there's nothing wrong, does it mean she has to be reinstated or go back to her job?
So, Sami, before we jump to the gun to that place, the Chief Justice has not been removed from office.
Just suspended?
She's just been suspended. Okay. She's been asked to step aside so that she could go through the investigation or investigative committee, meet the committee. The committee would go through his work. As we speak, there are 3 petitions. So the committee will look at each petition, would get the petitioners to come and testify. If there are witnesses, they'll call witnesses. If the Chief Justice would be given the opportunity to also respond to these petitions against her, if she also wants to call witnesses, she would call witnesses. After this, then a decision will be taken as to whether she still remains in office or she's removed from office. So as we speak now, she's not been removed from office. She's been suspended. And she just has taken a step away from performing her regular duties.
But do we know how long this will take? Or it depends on the terms of reference of the committee.
We are not sure how long this will take. For example, when there was the Anas investigative piece, where some judges were found to have engaged in some corrupt practices, a similar process was put in place. That process took as long as 3 months, if I'm not mistaken, to get these justices finally removed because they were found to have engaged in practices which was against the law. So there's no actual time frame for this investigative committee to do its work. But I am sure with the seriousness of this matter, usually they would expedite the process. But, you know, like I mentioned earlier, there are 3 different petitions, and these petitions will not be taken as one. Each one will be dealt with differently.
Okay.
Because they are different petitioners. So they'll call the first petitioner.
So she has to answer for all 3 petitions against her?
Yes.
So one dealt after the other?
So they'll deal one after the other.
Okay.
So if, say, Hansen is the first petitioner, they'll go through Hansen's case, should go through the process and respond to Hansen's case. If I am the second petitioner, they'll go through my case. We'll go through the same process. I bring witnesses, I testify, she comes to testify. Then they'll go to you, who is the third petitioner.
This will take a long while.
But it's important. It's important to point out that the decision to suspend the Chief Justice is a discretion the Constitution has given to the President, and so in that same thinking, Article 146, Clause 11, gives that same power to the President to revoke any suspension. So even though the processes as elaborated by Fred, in your view, may take quite a long time, if the President, in his own view, think that where investigations have got into, he thinks that the Chief Justice can still be performing her role as a Chief Justice while investigations continue, the Constitution, by Article 146, Clause 11, gives that same power to the President to revoke this suspension. And so I think that we may not know the time frame for which the hearing of these petitions will take, but 3 sets of petitions will go into full-blown trial where the Chief Justice will be allowed to face her accusers, should be allowed to cross-examine them if possible, or cross-examine their witnesses to challenge certain allegations. They will be allowed to also respond to the petition, to her response to these petitions. And so it's an elaborate process. Mind you, in determining the prima facie case, the case that Esofo sent to court was to say that the Chief Justice should be allowed to respond to the petitions. The President agreed to a letter written by Her Ladyship, Justice Gertrude Torkornoo, that she should be allowed to respond to these petitions. However, we don't know on record if the petitioners were also made to respond to her response. Yeah. But when it gets to the full-blown investigations now, as Fred has put it, petitioner A will have his allegations. He'll be given the opportunity to prove these allegations in the way deemed fit and practices that the committee will adopt. Either he will be allowed to bring witnesses to provide evidence before the committee. The Chief Justice then will also now be allowed to make a response, and if she has any counter evidence whatsoever, and then her accuser will also have the option of challenging her response, and that will be for petition A, and then same will be done for petition B and C. There are three petitions, and so we cannot be certain or give an indication of the timelines for the hearing of the matter. But with respect to the suspension, what we know is that the president has exercised this discretion in line with his consultation with the Council of State to suspend her. However, the president, by that same constitution, has a power to revoke that suspension if he deems it fit.
Fred, so for now, what happens? Will there be an acting Chief Justice to head the judiciary till this particular committee finishes its work and gives out its recommendations?
Yes, I mean, so when the Chief Justice is not available, the senior most Supreme Court judge acts as Chief Justice. So as we speak now, the senior most Supreme Court judge is Justice Bafuboni.
Okay.
So he is going to take the stead as the Chief Justice, acting for the day-to-day activities of the judiciary. So Justice Bafuboni will now be handling the duties of the Chief Justice till a decision is taken by the President.
But is it the first time we are seeing this happen? Is it the first time? For those of us who do not know, is it the first time we are seeing a Chief Justice being suspended?
This is actually the first time in the Fourth Republic we are witnessing anything of a kind, where you have a certain Chief Justice being suspended. It's never happened with the Fourth Republic. And what comes close is the issue which had to do with the promotion of a Chief Justice. When the court, initially this country had its highest court being the Court of Appeal, where you had Justice Apalu, who was then the Chief Justice when the Court of Appeal was there. When there was the introduction of the Supreme Court, there was an issue whether Justice Apalu could be made Chief Justice. This issue, in fact, he was not made Chief Justice. He went to court to challenge that particular decision. This was the case which was led by our former president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and Jackie Chikata, where the court later indicated or ruled that Justice Apalu could take keep his job as the head of the judiciary at the time when he was removed from that particular position. But in the Fourth Republic, there's nothing of the sort. The Chief Justices we've had from the very beginning of the Fourth Republic
have all served
their term and have exited. We've never seen a case where the president has been petitioned, the petition goes through the entire process, and a prima facie case is seen and the justice is removed. We've never seen that in the Fourth Republic. This is actually the first time we are seeing that in the Fourth Republic.
Hansen, you are a friend of the court. I mean, you correspond for us in the courtroom. What has been the reaction? What have you picked up so far from lawyers and judges in respect of this particular issue?
Well, it's a matter of a mixed reaction. Of course, the process, as outlined in the Constitution for the removal of the Chief Justice, has been one that there've been attempts in past, and Fred makes mention of the Justice Fred Apalu case, and then there are attempts like during the time of President Kufuor, Justice Edward Kwame Redu, Justice Georgina Theodore. They've been attempts to remove Chief Justices, but it's not gotten to a point where a prima facie case has been established before. I mean, even you remember Justice Gertrude Torkornoo herself, in the dying end of the Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo administration, there was a petition where the president said there was no prima facie case for her removal. But this has gotten to a point where now not only have these petitions advanced to the investigative part, it has also gotten to where the president has exercised that discretion to suspend her. And for some, for those who think that the petitions raise genuine questions, they think that is a good way to go. But there are those who are saying that consider the context within which this is being done. This is a Chief Justice that has been accused of a lot of things by the ruling government. And so within the time frame and the context within which this is happening, any attempt to remove, in their view, is a political move and not an objective process. And these people seem to align with the argument of the NPP members in Parliament, essentially to say that I mean, the relevant portions for the removal of a Chief Justice is that you cannot remove a Chief Justice except for stated misbehavior, incompetence, or on ground of inability to perform the functions of his office arising from infirmity of body or mind.
Okay.
The argument these people make is that if the removal of Justice Gertrude Torkornoo is successful, because the idea of stated misbehavior and also on inability, for instance, the point on stated misbehavior, there are no limits to what is stated misbehavior, and they refer to what happened to Charlotte Osei, for instance, to say that procurement breaches amounted to stated misbehavior. Then you now put the office of the Chief Justice as part of those political offices when new governments come in. They want to do.
Is a fear of many. The idea is that if this is a precedent, if this happens, any future government may or will also make such an attempt to remove a Chief Justice who they perceive, to be moving. How would I want to put it? Who may perceive not to be in alliance with a particular government. And so if we should allow this to happen, remember when the minority had a press conference about a week ago when they also raised this same issue, you don't think the political undertone may not settle well with the country's judiciary?
Sami, this particular action being taken opens the floodgates to so many things. Yeah. You would have to consider two things. Let's consider first your concern and the concerns of many others, that we are treading on a very dangerous ground where we take a petition and remove a Chief Justice based on when the grounds are not so serious. Yeah. Where now somebody will come and now say, okay, the first government did it, I'm going to do it.
Also do it.
There are loopholes within the laws where anybody can take advantage of to get such actions taken. So yes, the people who raise concerns about opening the floodgates for future governments and presidents to also take such an action are justified, because you see, the Constitution, I believe, created the judiciary and made it an independent body for a reason. So I mean, you look at the last 20, 30 years of our existence as a country, or even from the very first republic, you'd realize that constantly there's been a change in the executive, there's been a change in the legislature. What has always remained and has been kept is the judiciary, yeah, where you hardly see the people from the executive or legislature touch. The judiciary has remained an independent backbone of this country, where we see them actually step in when they have to step in to stop certain atrocities, when they have to stop these atrocities. So now when you see these politicians now having to meddle
in the affairs, of the judiciary, it is cause to the extent
of the removal of the Chief Justice. Now it's likely to open the floodgates, where now everybody sees that it can be done. So we will do it. Now let's look at the other side of this issue. If the Chief Justice is found to have done something which is very grave, which someone believes or a citizen believes that is wrong, and hence she should be held liable for, are we also going to say that because of the fact that we are going to find a way, or we are going to touch the judiciary and it's going to open the floodgates, we should leave that person to remain just to save and protect the sanctity of the judiciary? You see the two arguments. So we find ourselves in a very difficult position as a country, where we are going to look at what are the merits of these petitions. Do these petitions deserve the Chief Justice, or concerns raised, or these stated grounds for removal, are they good enough to remove a Chief Justice? Then secondly, what would we be doing to ourselves politically? How are we going to influence the works of the judiciary with this action which might be taken for the removal of the Chief Justice? So we find ourselves in a very difficult position. And for me, the people who have been nominated or selected to hear this petition, the committee, need to hear it impartially. Because the future of our country, the future of our judiciary,
will lie mostly on the decision they will take.
Depends on them.
That's
Depends on
true.
them.
I agree with you.
You understand? It depends on them. So if really there's a merit for her removal, it should be beyond reasonable doubt that there's a merit and she needs to be removed. You understand? They need to ensure that political influence do not take center stage in their investigative work. They need to ensure that they are not used by the political class to make a decision. As we speak now, the decision has been made that she goes to face this committee. But now the members of the committee will now have to work and work impartially, work and ensure that they are working for Ghana and not for particular individuals. Yes, we've raised concerns of how the NDC in opposition raised issues with the Chief Justice, how some of them, even before today, the Deputy General Secretary indicated that they were going to get the Chief Justice removed. You've seen their friends on the other side who are going all out to protect the Chief Justice. It's become too political. The issue has become too political. And I don't think we should leave this issue for the politicians. I am glad that there's been a committee set up. When you look at the background of these people are well-respected persons of our society. You look at Justice Gabriel Pwaman. Justice Gabriel Pwaman was nominated to the Supreme Court in 2015. He's remained in the Supreme Court till date. Justice Samuel Kwame Edibu-Esiedu went to the Supreme Court in 2022. But when you look at his background, Justice Esiedu started his law work with the, what do you call them? As a lawyer, grew through the process and entered the court system as a magistrate. Went as a magistrate, went through the process, then at the end of the day became a Supreme Court in 2022. But he had worked with Shraj.
Oh, okay.
He started as a lawyer and worked with Shraj. You understand? So he's no mean person to be on this particular committee. His background, even outside being a judge, puts him at the right place to be able to determine this matter. You look at former auditor, Yao Domelovo. This is a very respected man. Respected internationally, respected in this country. And we've known him when it comes to his work and what he means with his work, where he believes that the right things would need to be done. Where at a point he stood up against government when the entire government was against him. This is someone we can stick our heads out for when it comes to integrity.
And he's a member of Oral. That cannot be taken out.
Yes,
No,
he is a member of Oral. He's a member of Oral. We have Major Flora Dalubs. Look at the discipline within the Ghana Armed Forces. Look at the processes you go through when you're in the Ghana Armed Forces. She's a major. She's a senior officer of the Ghana Armed Forces. There's some kind of respect, some kind of integrity to be in the Ghana Armed Forces with the position of a major. Professor James Sefajisa, he's with the Humanities Department of the University of Ghana, Sociology. It takes some kind of work to get there. You understand? So the future of this country, the future of the independence of the judiciary, where nobody will have a doubt as to whether politicians are the hands behind it or a decision which is made purely on evidence available to the committee, depends on these people. And they have a serious work to do. I don't want to be in their shoes.
I mean, the composition of that committee is directed by the Constitution. And if you look at the wording of that composition, it's one that the framers of the Constitution wants people who are of the same peer with the Chief Justice and people who are not within the legal system to be those who will come together and then make a determination, hoping that if you are bringing that balance, so for instance, the 5-member committee is supposed to be made up of 2 justices of the Supreme Court. In our case, Justice Poorman and Justice Asedu. And then 3 persons who are not supposed to be members of the Council of State, who are not supposed to be lawyers, and who are not supposed to be members of Parliament. And I mean, look at our country at the moment. What are some of the very enviable places that you want people want to be? I mean, a lot of people want to be lawyers, want to be in Parliament, and if they get the opportunity to get to be at the Council of State. So the framers of the Constitution are hoping to look at people who may not in their day-to-day activities be directly involved in the politics of the country to come in. And that is why the 3 other persons, the majority of the people who are forming the committee are people who are not directly involved in the day-to-day politics of our country. And the 2 others is to make sure that your own colleague that you've been on the same panel with, persons that you may even be
like a peer review.
Yeah, certainly.
So that understand your work.
Who understand your work, who understand the nature of your work, and so who may feel your shoes, who may have a certain form of empathy for you. And so the framers of the Constitution set up these the committee in such a manner that if that committee comes out and say that indeed the Chief Justice is guilty for the allegations leveled against her in this particular matter, then people would have to accept it, because there are 2 persons who would agree with certain challenges that you may have faced in line of your duty, that you may or may not have done something. And then there are 3 other persons who are not engaged in the day-to-day activities of the court or in our politics, who will look at it from an objective point of view. And so the point Fred makes about they having an important role to play, I think that the Constitution itself, by its creation, sets it in a very unique manner so that when they do an objective work and bring out their findings, at least the entirety of Ghanaians or the majority of Ghanaians will agree with it.
Hansen Ajimai, our court correspondent, as well as Fred Tete Jabano here with us. And my name is Samit Riafe. You're still watching Channel One TV, coming to you live from our studio here in Accra. The breaking news is that President John Dramani Mahama has suspended the Chief Justice of the Republic and has set up a 5-member committee to look into the 3 petitions that were forwarded to him in respect of misconduct in court against the Chief Justice. We'll go for a quick break. When we come back, we'll discuss more.